I'm very glad to give this webinar. Actually, this is one of my first webinars that I'm giving, and I usually I think I would prefer having a live audience, but this will be different. And the best thing about this is that everybody is either at work listening to me, and I am here up in the Laurentians with a beautiful surrounding because I'm on a day off. This is March break, so. Feels useless to do any jokes, and I'm just going to go straight to the content of my presentation. So the outline, we're going to talk about the generation and the recovery per sector in Quebec, so the data and the information we have in regards to all of those different sectors where there are organics generation. The waste management, really the history of it all, starting maybe like in the 90s and coming up all the way up to 2014 and where we're heading for 2020. The waste policy and regulations, what are our goals, and of course the bans that are included in our waste policy. The implementation measures that are in place right now in order to favor the, to attain those recovery goals, and also the bans. The future treatment facilities that are really coming up to town. There are many of them, and we're trying to map these and have the most information out there for everybody that is interested in knowing what's going on here. So we have a little map. I will concentrate the information on Montreal and Quebec, but the information will be accessible for all of the province. And of course, facing challenges. So I will go briefly through different issues that, of course, can either be a limit or a challenge in regards to either implementing a ban, but also the choice of technology and all other issues that we can face. So let's get started. For those who don't know who Recyc-Québec is, we are a state agency. We are affiliated with the Environment Ministry in a way that we do not make regulations, but we work closely with them. And so we also have different mandate and a vision, clear vision, which is to promote and develop the reduction, the reuse, recovery, and recycling of containers, packaging, and products with a view of conserving resources. Our vision is to mobilize Quebecers and to promote innovative and sustainable management of residual materials. Just by the way, so that people know, in Quebec we use the term residual materials in order to, when we talk about waste, this is just a way for us to give more value actually to the waste. And so all of our policies and public documents refer to residual materials. So just because I'm not sure who is listening to this and if everybody knows about the province of Quebec, but just to give you a rough idea, of course we have a lot of space here, and also the administrative regions are divided into 17 regions. In there we have 104 municipal regions, and that includes more than 1,000 municipalities. The total population is 8 million, and we have about 10 cities who are over 100,000 of population, and the most important cities are around Montreal metropolitan community area, which includes like a whole 3.8 million of population, and the Quebec metropolitan community around 100,000 population. Of course, there are also a lot of rural municipalities that will also be having to do management of their organic waste. So let's go to the generation per sector. Just before I start this, of course, we always need to talk about the accuracy of those numbers, and This is the most up-to-date information we have up to now. It comes from different studies, characterization studies, but also waste assessments that we do every 2 years. So the residential food and yard waste that you see in the first line at 1.3 million tons annually. This is based on the assessment we make for this one is from 2010. But of course, there will be an update of this. We're actually doing the 2012 waste assessment right now, so data should be accessible in the near future, so in the spring. So we're going to update those numbers soon. For municipal biosolids, it's estimated around 0.7 million tons a year annually. Paper mill sludge, around 1.2 million tons. So all quite big sectors, generator sectors here. The ICI, now that is a tricky data to get, right, because of there is so much diversity in this, in the institutional, commercial, industrial sector. But this is a rough estimate based on waste characterization study done to disposal a couple of years ago. So that's 1.2 million tons for this sector. And the last one is the food processing waste. This is at 1.3 million tons. This is data coming from a study done last year by StudyNov for the Environment Ministry. So this is also an estimate, but before that we didn't have any idea of the amount of waste. We knew there was a lot of organic waste generated in the food processing industry, but we had no idea exactly how much. So this is an estimate. So next slide, we're going to be looking at, oh, sorry, that's the total at 5.4 million tons a year annually. So next slide, sorry. You'll see in gray the total, it's the same numbers in the same categories. So residential, biosolids, paper mill, sludge, other ICI, and food processing. And you can see here on the gray line that this is elimination. So this includes landfilling and also incineration. And in the green, the recycling, so including land spreading and composting in this case. But also for food processing, we'll see that it also includes the use of organic waste in animal feeding. So for residential, let's look at our present recovery goals. So for the residential area, we are around 12%. This was the 2010 data for our residential. Right now we're looking at our new data, and this is going to be coming up a little, but not much, because I'll talk about it a little later on, because of course the major cities like Montreal and Quebec have only small projects of organic recycling right now. So when all of the major projects are going to be into place, of course we are looking at this coming up way higher. Municipal biosolids would be at around 31%. Now, this data is also from 2011, but this has to come up a little bit also because there is a new 2012 study from the Environment Ministry that just came out. So it'll be just a little bit higher than this, so 31%, but it's still in the 30%. So there's still a lot of work to do in here. Paper mill sludge is estimated at around 28% of recycling rate right now. The other industrial, commercial, and institutional sector is estimated around 14% recycling recovery. And also for food processing now, this is the interesting part coming on from that study I just mentioned, done last year, where the recycling rate should be estimated around 97%. This includes all of the organic waste that is used as animal feed. So basically, the sectors that we will want to focus on and you can see that in yellow, the municipal biosolids and paper mill sludge are both sectors that have, let's say, nice and accessible organics that we can easily recycle through land spreading mostly, and composting, and of course anaerobic digestion when that will be available. And the two others that we'll need to focus on after this, well, still we're doing it at the same time, but has a little bit more challenge, of course, for the residential and other ICI sector. Well, we're so harder to get that material, and of course there's always the foreign matter and the collection that we need to put into place to in order to get to that tonnage. Okay, so next slide, just a little bit of information on the processing facilities we have in Quebec. So for the composting facilities, we have about 41 facilities, mostly outdoor windrow composting, but we also have some that have air sourced and piles. So it varies from composting sites, but mostly it's windrow. They process yearly 400,000 tons of organic waste. And on that 40 facilities, there are about 10 facilities that actually compost more than 80% of the total 400,000 tons. As for anaerobic digestion, we call it also a biomethanization, so biomethanization in Quebec, we refer to that. But it's still really at the first stage, right? So we have about 780 facilities for municipal biosolid treatments. Usually there are smaller tonnage, not that big. And we also have some on-site small AD facilities for some food processing establishments like cheese factories, and a few on-farm, but it's really limited right now as for the numbers of AD facilities in Quebec. So we're going to do an overview, like a historical overview of what where we were and where we're heading. So I decided to start off in the 1998. Of course, I could have went way further, but then again, we don't need to go back to the 60s. I mean, this is organics recovery is mostly something that we've been starting to talk about in the late 90s. Even though before we were talking about it, but really we were focusing on recycling of containers and other materials, right, easier access. So in 1998, we had the Quebec waste management policy, where we had 60% recovery goals for 2008. Of course, there were other goals for other materials and also for different sectors. But this was like the start to saying we want to achieve something important for organics recovery. Now maybe 60% was a little high at that time to think that we could reach that for 2008, but it gave a good signal to saying organics is important to recover this and to do something with it, not just send it to landfill. So in 2001, there's been grant program for organics recovery. I won't go into details in this one in the next slide, so I can just talk a little bit about this one. It was a $1 million budget, and it was mostly to encourage organics recovery. So coming out of that $1 million, there's still information is still good. There's been a domestic composting guidebook and a promotional tour across the province that's been done with that money. And also some studies like the advantages of compost use, which is still good today, right? So next in 2003, the Environmental Quality Act included a mandatory municipal waste management plans for all of those regional municipalities. And so they had to plan out how they were going to achieve the 2008 goals. That included, of course, the organic 60% goal for 2008. I'll talk a little bit later on those plans that are coming that are going to have to be revised. So in 2006, there was the first action plan on climate change. I mentioned this because there's a direct link and focus on organics recovery in order to reduce the GHG. And it is part of the action plan. It was part of the first one, and it's part of the new one also. So there was also the implementation of waste disposal levy. I will give you more detailed information on that levy in the next slide. So this was major for waste management recovery in Quebec because the landfilling and disposal costs are low, they still are, but adding that waste disposal levy on every ton of disposed waste encourages, of course, the recycling instead of disposal. Also, there was a new regulation, modification and a new regulation on the landfill disposal and incineration of waste, still in 2006. 2008, there has been a Parliament Commission on Residual Materials, so there were a lot of information coming out from this commission where many organizations have spoken and given ideas and, of course, how they would see organics recovery in the future. And from this commission was published a report in which the recommendation was basically for the government to send a clear signal on organics recovery with organics goal, and also a way to achieve zero waste or zero organic waste to landfill and disposal in a period of time. And so coming out from that are major important realizations, such as the grant program for anaerobic digestion and composting facilities. I will, of course, get into details on this big program that gives out grant money for the facilities. So this is major for us in Quebec to get things moving on. In 2010, the government added a temporary waste disposal levy of $9.50, but I will go right into details in the next slides. This is an important levy also because it's added to the one that was implemented in 2006. So make it, of course, higher for every ton we have to dispose of. And also part of it is used to finance the grant program. So I will get into details soon for this. Sorry, I have to see the slide. Yes, okay. So in 2011, there was the new policy, Quebec's Residual Materials Management Policy, and its action plan from 2011 to 2015. So there are many orientations in this policy and also actions, and I will go into details once again in this next slide. So just so that you know, this is coming from 2011, and there's also an important change in our Environment Quality Act, which introduces the waste hierarchy in the law. So this was major also for us. Oh, just so, because I'm not sure I'm going back on this one, sorry, for the waste hierarchy. The fact that we have modified it was to put the reuse and recycling in order so that we would know where organic treatment from composting, anaerobic digestion, and also land spreading would stand in the waste hierarchy. And it is on the same line, the same level as recycling. So you're going to have, we have in the law, we see that there is, of course, a reduction at first and then reuse. And then after that, right next to that is recycling, which includes biological treatment of organics. So continue on, in 2013, there is a ban of paper and cardboard implemented. Now, this is this has been announced by the Environment Ministry. Now, I think the regulation needs to be changed. For any questions in regards to this, I will refer to a colleague of mine in the Environment Ministry who's probably listening to me right now. So, Danielle, I will put your the information at the end. So, if you have any questions after this in regards to regulations, you can call her up. So, still in 2013, there has been the Quebec's adaptation strategy on climate change and the action plan for 2013 and 2020. I mentioned this, like I mentioned it for the 2006 one. It is because organics recovery takes an important place in the strategy, and the goals include the treatment of organics in the GHG reduction goals. In 2013, most of the municipal waste management plans have to be revised, and that year was published guidelines in order to revise them. And of course, revising a plan, waste management plan at the municipal level means that they have to include measures to achieve the 60% goal for 2015, and also the ban of organics for 2020. So for this year on, we are looking towards a strategy for the 2020 organics ban that is underway by the Environment Ministry right now. There is also, looking up ahead, the ban of wood for this year, and a home composting grant program, which has just been announced last Friday, actually. So the information will be accessible on our website and also on the Environment Ministry site. In 2015, just going up to 2020 now, of course, there's 60% recovery of organics, which is still there. There was a 2008 one. Of course, we didn't achieve that one, so we postponed this one to 2015. And then from 2016 and on up until 2020, we're hoping to gradually implement the organics ban in order to achieve 100% for 2020. So just a little overview of Quebec's residual material management policy. I'm just going to look at the time, so everything is going okay. So the key elements of the residual material management policy is, of course, ending resource waste. It also includes the promotion of the achievement of the climate change action plan in the Quebec's energy strategy goals. And it looks to make all stakeholders responsible for residual materials management. So for any information, there is an English document that summarizes this, and you have the link there. The waste policy intervention strategies focus on the 3 R's hierarchy to prevent and reduce the production of residual materials, to, of course, discourage and monitor disposal, to ban the disposal of organic materials, to make producers more responsible, also support regional planning and performance, encourage the performance of the ICI and CRD sectors, which are important sectors, and also for organics, as we saw at the beginning, looking at the data. Increase knowledge, inform, raise awareness, and educate. We need that public participation in order to achieve our goals. And last, report results. So, of course, for this presentation, the major important strategies, intervention for organics, I find, is to maintain the 3 R hierarchy in order to see that the waste to energy comes after the recycling, so after any biological treatment and just before disposal. And also the ban of the disposal of organic materials. It's really major to send out the message that we don't want any more organics going to landfill or incineration for 2020. So the Quebec's waste policy and action plan also, as I said, has the 60% recovery goal. That includes, as I said before, the biological treatment in that 60% and not waste energy. So that 60% goal is for 2015. The gradual elimination then, as I mentioned, but just so that we go an overview of this, is the fibers, paper and cardboard was 2013, the wood 2014, and the organics, all other organics for 2020. Strategic plan, as I mentioned, is under implementation and is under preparation in order to detail how we're going to implement these and what are the measures that are going to be put into place. Just to come back to the climate change government strategy, I thought it was really important to see that even in the climate change strategy, they have a clear vision of where we're going to be in 2020. And that is that the amount of waste generated per person is going to be less, and that the collection of food scraps will be in place and part of the norm, right? Part of how we're going to just as recycling, it's going to be part of our lives, right? And all of this will make that the GHG emissions will be less. So this is part of the Quebec's climate change strategy for 2013. So considerations in the banning strategy, there is going to be priority to food waste reduction. This is something that we weren't really discussing 10 years ago. We were always referring to composting, which is fine, and land spreading, but we sort of forgot that there is so much food waste and that we need to implement some measures in order to see that there is a reduction of that waste generated. We should be focusing on the most important sectors in terms of tonnage and also the easier to recycle. Like we looked at the first slide, looking at those different generation sectors, there is some sectors like biosolids and coming from paper mills or from municipal water treatment facilities. It's, as we can say, easy access organics and mostly good quality organics that we can easily recycle either by land spreading, which is economically usually cheaper, and of course composting. And eventually the digestion of those sludge is also possible. The necessary collection services and treatment facilities must be available. Of course, the strategy will have that to take that into consideration. If there is no collection service and actually no treatment facilities in order to recover all of that material, then it's useless to collect it, right? So the treatment facilities need to be there, and that is why we have a major grant program for those facilities. Needs to consider also the presence of markets for the recovered and recycled products, and social acceptability of recycling management measures. Really important how those collection services and treatment facilities are going to be accepted by the public. And of course, regulation and control measures. The Environment Ministry has done a first preliminary study that you have the link right here, and as I said, is working on the strategy right now. So moving forward towards the 2020 ban, what are the actual support measures we have into place? Now, I mentioned these in the historical overview, but I'm going a little bit more into detail. So the disposal levy, you have the link here to the regulation if you need to go further into details. So the disposal levy is of a total of $21.30 a ton per waste eliminated, and this is divided into two amounts. $11.52. At first it was $10, but it's indexed every year, so it's now up to $11.50 Canadian dollars right now. And to that we added $9.50, which is now indexed to $9.78 per ton, which is a temporary levy that will be in place from 2013 to 2023. And this one is used partly to, of course, encourage municipalities to implement organics recovery, but also part of it will be used for the financing of avian composting treatment facility programs. So most of the money that is collected through the disposal levy is redistributed to municipalities, and there are performance requirements included in this. So the financial program for biomethanization, which is AD, and composting of organics material is in place since 2009, but it goes from 2008 till 2017. It includes a total investment of 650 million Canadian dollars, and that includes federal participation, provincial, and of course municipal or private sector that will have to also invest in those facilities. I will go into details in another slide for this program. There are two grant programs. These two are managed by Recyc-Québec, and I'm sorry for the financial program for biomethanization. This is administered by the Environment Ministry. So those two that just popped up, the Waste Management Performance Program for the ICI sector and the Technology and Markets Development Programs are both managed by Recyc-Québec. There was a $10 million budget for the ICI sector, and also a $20 million budget for the Technology and Markets Development Program. Also, in 2013, was adopted a new action plan coming from the Table for Organics Recycling, which is managed by Recyc-Québec in collaboration with the Environment Ministry. This is an important meeting of all different stakeholders, and I will talk just a little bit more about the orientations and what's going on with this action plan, which is based on a $4 million budget. And also, as I mentioned earlier, this new announcement of the domestic and community-sized composting grant program that's just been announced by the Environment Ministry last Friday, and the annual budget will be of the budget announced is of $2 million. So just to go back a little bit on the Table on Organics Recycling and its action plan, you have the link here to access this action plan, which includes many different actions, and but they are separated into 4 orientations, which are to favor recycling of easily accessible organics materials, which is mostly biosolids. So as I mentioned earlier, the biosolids coming from used water facilities and, of course, some paper mills. So there are different activities going on with this, such as the development of a guide for the use of biosolids, and also a social acceptability study on the land spread of biosolids, which should be interesting to see the results. As the second orientation is to facilitate decision-making for recovery, recycling, installation, and production of quality products. So this includes many actions, such as the one that we are working on right now, the development of different tools for the ICI sector and municipal sectors, such as case studies. We already had case studies, but we always need to have that updated information, which is really important. And there are also going to be tools for the ICI sector that are going to be developed. And the fourth orientation is the promotion and information to promote the information to different publics. In this, we have actions such as the revision of our website on organics to include a new section on the ICI for the ICI sector. So for more information, you can refer to the document, which is in the link here. So a little bit more information on the financial grant program for biomethanization and composting facilities. It's a financial support for implementing AD and composting facilities. As I mentioned, it has a total 650 million Canadian dollar invested in this, coming from federal and provincial government. And the way actually the percentage of admissible costs that can be granted depends on either if you choose for it to be an anaerobic digestion or a composting facility. And the percentage of admissible costs vary according to the technology, but also according to if it is a municipal or a private owned project. So for municipal anaerobic digestion, it would be a 60% of admissible cost that would be granted. This can include or not a composting facility for the composting of digestate, and also if it is a municipal and private sector project, it can also have the 66% of the admissible cost as long as the municipality owns more than 50% of the project. So if it is a pure private project, it goes down for anaerobic digestion to 25% of admissible cost. For composting, it is for a municipal project 50% of admissible cost, and for a private project that would go down to 20% of admissible cost. So the information is available on the internet site, the Environment Ministry internet site. So future projects coming to town. This is hard to keep up to date, as you will know, because there are some projects that have had the grant, and also some others that have just been announced in the media. So it's hard to keep up and keep track of all of those different projects that are going to be implemented. So, but we try to keep this information up to date. So from January 2014, there were about 13 AD projects that have been either granted or publicly announced. Most of them are integrated projects, such as the integrated composting of their digestate and leaves, but some don't. Some will go directly to land spreading of the digestate. It also focuses on residential and commercial food waste, so source-separated organics for the most, including for some biosolids, and also in some cases food processing waste. About 11 composting projects are under planning or either implemented. There are a couple of them that are already small size that are implemented. There is the residential and, the composting projects focuses on residential and commercial food waste. also source separated organics. Some regional municipalities are talking about implementing mechanical biological treatment projects, but it has not yet been really confirmed. There are some that have publicly announced them, but there are none that have been granted yet. So we have done at Recyc-Québec a map of the different facilities that are existing composting facilities, but also the future projects, mostly for FSO and biosolids that are coming up. This, as I just said, can change a lot over time because, and that's why we put this important information, that what we put on this map is really for information purposes, and we got this information through public information, either in the media, articles, seeing that things that have been said publicly, and so of course it is subject to change. So for the purpose of this presentation, I won't go over all of the existing composting facilities and tell you what they process and all, but you can access this information on our website. So what we see, the green dots are the existing composting facilities, and the orange dots are mostly the existing also anaerobic digestion. This is biosolids treatment, water treatment facilities. So the new and future sites, the Quebec map will look something like this. So the pale green are the future composting facilities, and the pale orange is AD facilities. So of course what you see is that there will be a concentration of facilities, of course, near the Montreal area and the Quebec area, the Quebec City area, and that is why I decided to just give you a little bit more information on these. So for the Quebec City project, it is an AD facility project for roughly 85,000 tons a year of residential and ICI waste, but it will also include biosolids. So the tonnage has changed in what it has been announced. So this is the last number, public number I had, but it can be subject to change. So now we're heading back to the Montreal region. This is the island of Montreal here. So I'm going to present the future sites of 80 sites on the South Shore. I'll talk the ones on the Montreal Island and also on the north part of Montreal. So 6 major AD facilities that have been announced anyways, maybe there will be more. The Saint-Hyacinthe one is, phase 1 has already been implemented. So it's a total of 215,000 tons. This, of course, includes wet tons of biosolids, but it is planning to receive also residential food waste and commercial food waste also. So this has been announced and granted for a total of $47.3 million. This is Régie, and I will give out all of the information because, of course, the names are very long, and there are some municipalities that have joined together in order to implement these projects, and so the detailed information will be accessible. La Régie de la Vallée du Richelieu is an AD project for biosolids only. The estimated tonnage is 26,000 tons, and also this one has also been granted, confirmed at $11.9 million. The SUMEC is a mixed society for the south shore of Montreal. 3 regional municipalities are included in this project, and also private sector. It is an AD facility, and they've added composting for their part of their digestate and their yard trimmings. The rough tonnage is estimated around 40,000 tons. This is residential, mostly residential food waste, but it will also include a little bit of ICI sector food waste also. Longueuil, city of Longueuil, is also looking at AD and facility and the composting of their digestate, but it's not very clear on either the technology or the either for the AD or the composting right now. Not as much as other projects, I would say, but they're going ahead, and they have a rough estimate of 70,000 tons to process. The régie de valorisation, intermunicipale de valorisation des matières organiques is 2 MRCs, so Roussillon and Salaberry, who have joined together for also an AD project, and considering composting also for their digestate and yard waste. So that one would be at around 30,000 tons. And also la régie du bassin de Saint-Laurent for AD biosolids facility. That one has been granted for $15 million. And of course, humid tons of 110,000 tons. So for the Montreal region, I'm not sure how much time I still have on this. There's been a lot of discussion on the Montreal projects. I'm just going to go roughly. I still have a couple of minutes to go through this. There are 2 major AD facilities that are planned for 60,000 tons. So the east side of Montreal and south part of it, and composting in-vessel facility for 50,000 tons for the west part of Montreal. This has been chosen because, of course, west part of Montreal has more yard waste, more residential area, and this part of Montreal for east side and south is more plex and multi-residential type of units. And there is a composting facility for the digestate and for the yard, some part of the yard waste that is planned, but the location right now is under revision. I will not go into details about this one. If you look it up on Google, you will see there's been a lot of media attention to this. And in the Laval area, which is just north of the island of Montreal, there is an AD project also planned, and for composting of their digestate also is considered in their yard waste, and the total tonnage is estimated around 92,000 tons. As I said earlier, those tons can really vary. This is the information that we got, as I said, on internet. So I'm just going to go directly to the limits and challenges because I've taken a lot of time. So yes, the competition between recycling processes can be an issue. It's not something that we're looking at that is going to like limit altogether the organics recovery, of course not. But we have to consider this. There is sometimes competition, let's say, between the use of organic residuals for animal feeding versus land spreading, or even using this as good intake for the AD facilities. Of course, seeing all of those facilities putting into place, this is an issue that mostly facilities will face. This has to be part of the plan for implementing the facilities. There are still cheap landfill tipping fees across the province. Some are higher, but of course the landfilling fees are still low in the Montreal region, basically. Even if we add that disposal levy, it is still cheaper in some cases to landfill than to recover that organic. Yes, the economic viability of AD projects, there's been a lot of discussion about this. Of course, the first intent of the government to promote AD projects was, of course, to reduce those GHG and to achieve those organics goals. But the economic viability can sometimes be hard to achieve depending on technology, depending on so many issues in the context. That has been part of a lot of discussions in the last year also. Municipal management and own projects have, in a way, to conciliate with the private sector. Now, we want to encourage the municipal management of and collection of organics, but the private sector is also out there, and there needs to be a conciliation between them, and also to see how this is going to be done in a harmonious way, harmonized way. And then of course applying the bans and control is going to be, I would say, a challenge in those different measures that are going to be implemented in order to control that organics that in the first years will still be going to landfill and to disposal facilities. So that is, I think, for all countries and all provinces that will decide to go with banning, this is a major issue, right? How to control it, how to apply it. And ensuring coherence between regulation, policy, and programs, and also the waste plans. We have a lot of regulation policies in place right now. We have programs and those waste management plans also. And we need to find a way that when we give out a decision, it needs to consider the banning and our goals for organics recovery. And that needs to be the same and applied the same way in our plans, in regulations, and in the way we do things. So this is something that we need to adapt to, but we're definitely on the right track. So this is just to end this tools and information that are accessible for mostly for municipalities, but we're adding, as I said earlier, a new section for ICI and on organics website. And for any question, please feel free to contact me. And as I said, you can also send questions relating to laws and regulations to Danielle Thomasin. So that is it for my presentation.
Thank you, Sophie. That was fantastic. I think Jolene will moderate the question and answer session. So if anybody has any questions, they can type them in the section at the bottom that says for questions. Is that correct, Jolene?
Yeah, you can type. This is Jolene Rutter from Green, Manitoba, just chiming in here. If you have any questions or comments, you can just type them in and I'll read them aloud to Sophie, or if you want to, if you have access to a microphone or using a phone, I can unmute you and you can ask your question or comment. Currently right now we don't have any questions. Oh, there we go. I knew that wouldn't take very long. Okay, our first question is from Jean Bard from Metro Vancouver. And would you like to go ahead?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering what your markets are for the wood waste that will be banned in 2014.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the question. The sound is very bad.
Yeah.
Jolene, did you get that?
I didn't get that, Jean. Quite a bit of feedback. Do you want to try? Do you want to try asking again? Or again, you could just type it in as well.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, let's move on to another one. Oops, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so Michelle Fairbrother from Ontario is asking, are you aware of any municipal programs which will come as a result of the projects you had outlined to come as of January 2014?
You mean the actual, probably the actual facility that are going to be implemented? There are 2 or 3 that are already, actually 3 projects that are already implemented and working facilities. So, and they are mostly, of course, composting facilities for rural areas. There is a Rimouski project, and they've just implemented it last fall, their organics collection. So, and they were granted for their composting facility that was implemented right on their landfill area. I don't know if that answers the question correctly. But most, if I can add some information to this, is that most of the larger facilities, of course, are going to be implemented maybe in the next few years. And it's going to take a while for the collection programs to be widely spread out throughout the province.
Okay, so the question from Jean was, which markets do you have for wood waste that will be banned in 2014? Will all wood be banned or just unpainted and untreated?
Very good question. I would probably refer to the Environment Ministry for this question for more details, but I can tell you that usually the wood that that is used right now, either wood chip, is all recovered because there is so much high demand for it. And of course, the harder to get material is, like mentioned, painted or treated wood will take more time to find out markets for it, and that's probably going to be only waste to energy markets. But I will refer to Danielle Thomasin from the ministry to answer and give you more details on that one.
Okay, and the next question is from David Laranger King, and he's from MRC, the Haute Quebec. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these. And he's asking, is the fund for the ICI sector emptied?
Is the fund for the ICI sector
emptied, or is there still funding available?
I'm not sure exactly how much funding there is, but for that means he's probably referring to the grant program, Recyc-Québec's grant program for the ICI sector. And there hasn't been any public information out there on the amount still available, but I'm not sure exactly who is still answering those the questions for the ICI sector right now. But if he can send me an email, I will forward this to the responsible person at the office.
Okay, and a question from Jeff Hill from BC is asking, what municipalities are most looking for private partners in AD/composting technology systems?
Good question. It always depends on context, right? There are right now I would say, two major projects that are planning an AD facility and that decided to go with a public-private partnership. And it was really contextual. One of them is actually the facility will be based beside an ethanol production plant right now. So of course the collaboration and the partnership was I would say easy, because they wouldn't be happy me saying that, because it's never easy, right? Those type of projects are really hard and difficult to implement. But I would say that there was opportunity, that's what I was looking for, to implement and include the private sector in the project. So, but all of the others, like the Montreal area, on the island of Montreal, there are planned to be public-owned facilities, and but that does not mean that they're going to operate them. They're probably going to go out and have the design and operation by the private sector. Hope that answers the question.
He did send up a follow-up question here asking,
sure.
Are these open to public bidding now?
Some of them are, yes, and for any information on the tendering and public bidding on the facilities, the municipal facilities, they have to put this on a system of public tendering, and I can send in the link to that SEAO internet site, where all of the public tendering goes on, and they should go through them in order to see if they want to bid in.
Okay. We have 4 more questions here, so I think we're going to stop it at that. So I'll ask these next 4. It would be, how is the disposal levy applied to all disposal facilities, public and privately owned / operated?
How is it applied? Well, basically all facilities, either landfilling or incineration, either if they are private or public, apply the ban. I'm sorry, the levy. I'm ban-oriented mind. And then every year they need to fill out information and form and send that in to the Environment Ministry, who does the follow-up on the tonnage entry and on the amount of levy that needs to be paid up.
Okay. And another question from Vancouver would be, do the new AD and composting facilities that receive grants have to accept organics from all sectors?
They don't have to, but it has to. There are some requirements for the not necessarily the residential, but it has a requirement for a minimum of maximum of 10% of agricultural organics. So it can't go over 10% coming from agriculture, but the rest can be residential food waste, ICI food waste, and also biosolids from any other sectors.
Would that information be available on kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. It's available on the Environment site, Environment Ministry site, and the link, so I can show you, the link was in the slide when I talked about this one, the financial program for biomethanization. I hope you can see this clearly. This is the link here to go to the information.
Okay. And next question. This is again from David Loranger King. He's asking if we applied for the $2 million grant for community projects, can we still apply for a big-scale composting or AD facility?
I'm not sure. I think there is it will be differentiated, but basically it's just been announced, right? So I didn't even have a chance to look at all the details and the requirements, but I don't think that you will be able to. Basically, if you are getting an amount of money for domestic and home composting, and also for that includes community composting and a small in-vessel composting, then you would not be able to have the grant money for a facility. But I would really want to check that into the new program that's just been announced. And if you contact Danielle Thomasin at the Environment Ministry, she will have that information for sure.
Okay. And the last question from Juliana Costa from Quebec. She's asking, do you have any previews on how the carton, paper / wood bans will be enforced on the municipal level?
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, because many questions like that, it's hard to answer because it is still under evaluation on how it's going to be applied. And this really needs an answer from the Environment Ministry from how it's going to be applied. But basically, on a municipal level, what you need to consider is that your waste management plan includes this ban, so all different measures need to be taken into account. And for the actual implementation, right now there is not enforced measures, of course, at the municipal level.
Okay, well, with that, that's the end of our questions, and thank you very much for being able to answer them or provide us with resources. So on behalf of Green Manitoba, I'd definitely like to thank you for your presentation. That was fantastic and gives us some information on, where Manitoba can head as well. And would you like to follow up with anything, Jim?
Yeah, I'd also like to say on behalf of the Compost Council of Canada, thank you for the presentation, and we hope that we'll see you again next month.
Absolutely. Yes?
One more thing, sorry. Presentation slides and a recording of the presentation will be made available, and I've put it on there, put the link in that chat box, but it's at ncid.ca/detail/177. That's the Manitoba Sustainable Initiatives Directory, so you can find it there.
Yeah, you can also be able to access it at the Compost Council of Canada website as well. Okay.
And I invite anybody that wants to get into contact with me and send me an email. I would be glad to answer anybody's questions.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll see everyone next month then.
Thank you.
Bye.